From MySing Media, this is AboveStatus. I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Myford MySing. AboveStatus is all about sharing real, raw, and inspiring stories of young immigrants and uplifting conversations with activists, professionals, and politicians. The amazing thing about this podcast is that it is unedited and unfiltered conversations. Join us as we dive deep into personal journeys, explore challenges, and celebrate the triumphs of those redefining success. Today, I had the privilege to speak with Tawheeda, co-founder of Onward, an organization dedicated to supporting dreamers who have relocated or are planning to relocate to Canada from the United States. Tawheeda's story is compelling and deeply moving, reflecting the broader immigrant experience in North America. Born to Afghan refugee parents, Tawheeda moved from Canada to the U.S. at a young age and quickly discovered the profound limitations placed upon her by her immigration status. Her journey from feeling trapped by these constraints to making the courageous decision to leave the U.S. for Canada highlights her resilience, determination, and unwavering pursuit of freedom and opportunity. During our conversation, Tawheeda shared insightful reflections on her childhood, the challenges of assimilation in rural America, and the profound impact events like 9/11 had on her identity and sense of belonging. She openly discussed the intense emotional toll of living undocumented, the frustration of temporary statuses like DACA, and the courageous decision she made to pursue her dreams beyond U.S. borders. We also explored the founding of Onward, which began as a small Facebook group and has since grown into a vibrant support network serving thousands of young immigrants on their journey to Canada. Tawheeda's vision emphasizes the power of community, mutual support, and emotional resilience, especially when political systems fail. Her insights into the complexities of immigrant family dynamics, generational struggles, and the deeply personal nature of immigration decisions were highly informative. Our conversation highlighted Tawheeda's transformation from a teenager constrained by her limited opportunities to an empowered leader, guiding others toward freedom and fulfillment beyond borders. You must listen to her story, not just for those affected by immigrant policies, but for anyone seeking inspiration from a young, talented, and courageous young immigrant. Join us for an in-depth discussion that celebrates resilience, community, and the immigrant dream of creating your own path. How is it going?
Doing great. How are you doing, Myford?
I'm doing excellent. Tell me, what is something this week that dominated your thoughts?
That's a good question. I would have to say the kindness and the willingness of people that just want to help you just because, like people showing up for one another. And that's been just the pure kindness of people have been dominating my thoughts.
That's good. Thank you so much. I mean, speaking of kindness, we appreciate you taking time from your busy life to be with us today and provide your valuable thoughts and your experience with our audience. So let's start with your childhood. What is your earliest childhood memory and Why is it so dominating for you?
Yeah, my first or the earliest childhood memory I have is playing at a park with family friends in Canada. I just vividly remember the grass, the sunlight, and all of that. And I don't know why it dominates my thoughts per se, but it's definitely one of the earliest childhood memories I've had. Just the memory of just being a pure child, just living or enjoying life carefree.
That's great. I remember one of our previous conversation. You talked about your kindness as a child. How did that influence your childhood? How kind you were?
Um, I definitely think it was a magnet for bullying, for sure, as an early kid, as an early child. Like, I
Mm,
remember, um, like in elementary school in the US, kids definitely took advantage of the kindness and really used whatever frustrations they've had as an outlet.
mhm,
And I remember just being very confused as a kid and as an early teenager, kind of being a bit resentful of it. But
mhm.
um, now it's more of understanding their perspective. Like maybe they didn't have the right welcoming environment, they needed someone to project whatever
Yeah,
anger or
yeah.
frustrations they have. So looking at it now, I just feel bad for those kids. But yeah.
You don't feel bad for yourself, but you feel bad for them because
Oh,
they probably had other things going in their lives
oh, I definitely
and they
felt
took it
bad
out
for
on you.
myself though.
Okay.
Like I definitely felt bad for myself. Like I wish I had that courage to fight
To fight
back. And
back.
I feel like as a teenager and early adulthood, I had that voice to
Ah,
fight back.
that's interesting.
Hmm.
And you mentioned that you got your kindness from your mom. So how was your family dynamics at home?
Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I think with my family dynamic back home, my parents were both working a lot, like, the immigrant lifestyle, trying
Yeah.
to make ends meet. And I just remember them constantly working, constantly being busy, that just like any immigrant parent, it's hard to be present for
Mm-hmm.
your kids at the moment when their priority is to make sure they are well fed, well clothed, and so forth. But the emotional presence, of course, with like any immigrant parent, was not really there.
Yeah, yeah. It was the same thing for my wife as
Mhm.
well. Her parents were working around the clock, and although they show emotion and they are welcoming, but sometimes they could be absent because of the immigrant lifestyle, as you said, because they are in a new country, they're trying to make the best out of it, and usually the job quality may not be, life balance may not be there. You also mentioned that you migrated from which country?
Well, my parents were refugees from
From
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan.
and then they came to Canada.
They came to Canada, and then you lived in the U.S. as well.
Yes, correct.
When did you move? When did your parents make the decision to move from Canada to the U.S. and how did that affected you?
Um, They made the decision to move from Canada to the US around 1995, so I was 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
In terms of how that impacted me, honestly, I don't remember my emotions that much as a kid because I wasn't in kindergarten yet. Like I was still, like I kind of saw this as, oh, we're going to somewhere else, and it was excitement, but I wouldn't say it like impacted me with the decision. I would say like the lifestyle change, like you like over time, has of course like impacted my childhood.
Mm. As a young immigrant, you moved to a different country. How was it adjusting at school, like especially in your teenage years?
Um, I would say like it's not it's not the journey of immigrating because as a kid, um, I moved to the States when I was 5.
Pretty young.
So, and I grew up in a town that was like 85% white, the rest less Latino, a very small fraction of a percent like Native American and other groups. So I would say the journey was more like how living in a very rural part of the US
Mm.
impacted my life. That is I guess like my background, being from a different background, my
Mm-hmm.
name, people not knowing where Afghanistan was on a map until 9/11 happened. So
Mm.
I think it's a lot more the need to be, well, I would say I was Americanized, but the greater need to feel American, to feel like
Mm-hmm.
I was belonging, and all the current events that surrounded
Mm.
like 9/11, for example, and that impacted how I reconciled with my identity.
Ah, could you tell us a little bit about that, if you are open to discussing that? When that happened, you were pretty young, right?
I was 11,
You was
so
11.
it was like during the formative years of like growing, developing into like slow like being a preteen,
Preteen, yeah.
but like eventually becoming like a teenager, and you still have the cognitive awareness of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, yeah, like it really impacted my identity drastically. I like today we have TV shows like Rami, Mo, Deli Boys, or all the shows that like Mindy Kaling have produced to show so much diversity of people who are brown or from different cultures. I didn't really have anything to look up to. So
Mm.
when 9/11 happened, it was like patriotism or
Yeah.
bust. And it's a very different kind of patriotism where, like, I was definitely subjected to discrimination in the sense that, like, oh, are you an ally with the US or are you
Wow.
not? I've had like kids in my middle school call me terrorist or laugh at my name and identity, and that came with shame. That came with me wanting to bury my Afghan heritage. And um, with that, it was like the greater need to feel white, to feel
Mm-hmm.
American, to feel belonging, to
Mm-hmm.
belong somewhere. But at the end of the day, I was visibly brown. I have
Yeah.
very like curly hair, visibly brown. Also with a very long name that I could not hide myself from. So it was a very interesting time.
Wow. I'm so sorry you went through that. On a similar note, my wife's name is Sadhana Singh, and they would butcher her name. And she always wanted to be American and basically feel belong to her peers. So she adopted the name Ashley. So have you ever had the thought of adopting another name?
Definitely. I definitely had the thought of like adopting another name, but like, I don't know what's another name like that I would go with. Like, I know people have said that I look like a Maria,
Maria,
whatever that
whatever that
means.
means. Yeah,
Yeah, whatever
yeah.
that means. Like, I know people would say, oh, you look like a Tom or you look like a Jacob, but I don't understand what that means. I feel like I kind of look like my name in many ways that I
Hmm.
can't find another name that would showcase like what I look like. And I'm honestly like in retrospect, I'm really glad that I didn't change my name. Like my name is Tawheeda Wahabzada. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a very long name. And it's funny because a lot of people would ask me like, "Oh, do you have a nickname or do you have a middle name?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "No, like I'm not going to make myself smaller for you."
Yeah, yeah.
Like I feel like having a nickname makes myself palatable, smaller
Mm-hmm.
to someone for their taste, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not who I am, and I don't want to be someone to make myself palatable. It's like you either accept me for who
Yeah.
I am with my name and everything, or you don't.
Oh, you don't. Yeah.
And it takes that, like, people can make the effort to learn someone's name. Like, it's like basic respect for
Basic.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, my name is pretty easy. It's my Ford. However, people call me all type of different type of names. They call me they call me 40, and they also call me my God, my Lord. I'm like, it's my Ford. It's pretty simple, but the thought of somebody being named my Ford is different, and sometimes people don't make the effort to basically get to say your name properly or even try. So I can understand what you went through, and it's pretty
Definitely.
interesting.
It leads to mockery, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, do you, why are you mocking someone's name?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
imagine that person's childhood, that person's like upbringing. Like, why are you taking that extra stretch to mock someone's name?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of teenage years, you went to high school. At what age did you realize your immigration status made you different than your peers, and how did that affected you?
Yeah. Well, again, like growing up in Carson City, Nevada, even though it's the capital of Nevada, it
Mm-hmm.
still feels very rural. Like at that time, it was probably like 45,000 people, only one high school in town. That being said, like you have to drive everywhere from one place to another, and there's so much like rite of like I guess like a small town rite of passage by um, taking the permit when you're 15 and a half, or getting a permit when you're 15 and a half, um, applying for a driver's test and taking that when you're 16, having a beat up used car that your parents gave you so you drive to school, getting a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I remember when I learned that I couldn't take the permit test. And that made me realize that, oh, like, I can't drive around. I have to take the bus to school, or
Mm-hmm.
or one of my parents have to drop me off before they go to work. I couldn't, I couldn't get a summer job. So, like, I couldn't really build my savings in that sense of like working and saving money. It was a big wake up call about regarding like how limited
Mm-hmm.
my freedom was. Like, I couldn't drive around from one place to another. I had to rely on like my mom to drive me or to drop me off. And then there was that element of like trust, like does my mom trust me? Or maybe my mom would be like, "No, like I don't trust you going to this person's house, so you're going to
Uh-huh.
be stuck at home."
Wow.
Yeah, or it really inhibited my freedom. So it was basically like going to school, coming back home, doing my homework, doing absolutely nothing. And then the summers, doing absolutely nothing either.
Wow. So
Yeah.
many young people are currently going through the same situation, and you've went through it. And my wife had a similar situation. She lived in Monroe, Georgia, and it's completely like out in the middle of nowhere. Her dad used to drive her everywhere. And one thing that happened to her is that she had a job, but her dad used to drop her at work and then pick her up and then had to go and wait. in the car for hours until the mom gets off. Her mom gets off. So she had it really, really rough. But at the end of the day, you have to persevere. You have to basically have a dream and stick to it. And at the end of the day, you're going to come on top of it. This is a testament to your resilience. Right now, things are completely different. Yeah.
Definitely. And I was going to say, like, I remember in high school, I was just like desperately dreaming to live in a city where I could walk, where everything is just so accessible. And yeah, like now I have my license, and I've had my license when I had DACA in the US. And now I guess like I'm living the life that like I manifested in high school.
That's good. That's good. So if your high school you could see you now, what would your high school self think?
Um, she would be in total shock. Like my high school self was so shy, so insecure, like didn't really feel like she belonged anywhere. And now like seeing her adult self not being shy. And of course we all have our insecurities, but feeling a lot more secure and feeling like her adult self belongs somewhere. It's a huge change. It's a huge, like I feel like my teenage self would be like, is that really me? How, like just in a state of shock, like, is that really me?
I can tell as a good friend of myself and my wife, you are not shy. You don't have any insecurities that we can pick up on. You are very confident, and I can tell everyone that you are a good walker. You walk everywhere. Sometimes I'm like, she's walking from Leslieville to downtown Toronto. That's a good 45-minute walk, like
Gotta
give or
get my
take.
steps in. Gotta get my steps in.
I applaud you for all of that. So let's go back to your teenage years where you discovered you were undocumented and you were very limited. How did you address that with your parents? What were the conversations like?
I mean, imagine an angsty teenager full of like
Energy.
energy, rage, and just being mad, like, why can't I live my life freely? Like, why can't I go to my friend's house? Why can't I get a car? Like, I was a total teenager and I had a lot of frustration, and a lot of my frustration was being so limited. And I think like my parents did the best that they could, but they definitely didn't understand my rage, and it led to a lot of like arguments and shouting fights. Like I remember my mom saying, "You're so ungrateful, like you're so spoiled and entitled." And I was like, "How am I ungrateful when I don't have the freedom, where I can't drive, where I can't do like make a living out of myself? Like that's all I'm asking." And so just like that like clash.
Yeah, I can tell you it's a immigrant thing, right? They make life-changing decisions for you, and then they want you to stick with the minimum. At least this is what they say all the time is, at least life is not that bad. At least you have this. At least you have that. I don't want to have at least. I want to have the most. I want to have the most experience. I want to go out with friends. I want to do what my peers are doing. Not because I want to do it because they are doing it, but because it is a necessity for me. I need to network. I need to have conversation with friends. I need to go out to the movies. I need to experience life that a teenager is currently experiencing, and you are not able to do that. So do you see it differently now, what your parents did? Do you, how, let's say between how you used to discuss things with them in the rage and right now, knowing what you know now, do you feel any different?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a lot more like compassionate towards my mom and understanding. Like, she did the best she could. As an immigrant parent, she couldn't show up the way I wanted her to show up by being like more emotionally present. Like she didn't understand that. And now we're able to talk about these things. Like now we're both able to talk about these things more openly as we're both healed. And I think now I used to feel so guilty that I had a lot of like resentment towards my parents or like towards my mom. And now it's more like anger is a reaction to something unjust. As a teenager, I had every right to feel angry and be
Yes.
angry because I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have a place to play like sports. I didn't have like maybe to drive or something to like let go of my anger. I didn't have an outlet. And of course I was angry for being trapped. Every reason. Like it was a legitimate reaction to a legitimate circumstance.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and I agree with any young teenager out there listening to the show.
Yeah.
And it's okay to get angry. It's okay to challenge your parents, but always be respectful while doing it. That's my advice. But it's okay to have intense conversation, passionate conversation, ask questions, and try to get some answers from them. But always try to be respectful. Thank you so much for making it through the first 15 minutes of this episode. This tells me you're enjoying our conversation so far. But I do have a quick favor to ask. Please pause now, take a 2-minute break to like and subscribe to our podcast. After you finish this episode, I would love if you could tell us what you think of our show. Your support helps us share these powerful stories and reach even more people. In return, we promise to continue improving the show, bringing you the most genuine, unfiltered, and inspiring conversations possible. If you or anyone you know would like to share your unique story, we would love to hear from you on the podcast. Please send us a message on your favorite social media platform at AboveStatus. Now, let's get back into it. So, you made the decision to move to Canada from the US because you felt limited and you were looking for more opportunities. So how did that come about? When did the idea of moving from the US to Canada came about?
Yeah. Well, when I finished university in 2012, that was May, and I didn't have status then. I kind of I kind of started panicking with my degree because I have a degree, but I can't apply for jobs. So I slowly made that idea in my head that maybe I have to leave in the coming months. And then when the Obama administration introduced DACA, that's when I changed my mind. Like, oh, maybe I will give this a chance. And I definitely went through a honeymoon phase with DACA where I was like so happy, so grateful that I could work, make money, finally get a driver's license, finally be able to drive. But a couple of years in, like when I started to renew my status and then renew it, and then when I was like approaching my mid-20s, it was like right before the 2016 elections, kind of made a promise to myself that I can't live my life like this anymore. Like the honeymoon phase went away. Like I started to get annoyed by having to renew my status every few years and having to deal with the complexities of like healthcare, for example. Like we don't, at that time, DACA recipients didn't qualify for Obamacare, so you had to purchase healthcare outside of the marketplace, and that made it so unusually difficult to just get healthcare and all of that like bureaucratic like loopholes that you have to go through, and it still stressed me out. I still felt anxious. I couldn't travel the way I wanted to travel, and I didn't have, and I couldn't think about my life goals in the next 10 years. I had to think about things in like every year and a half. Oh, that's when I have to renew my DACA once again and my work permit. And I guess like around like 2016, that's when I made the decision that if nothing happens by the time I turn 29, I can't be 30 and live life like this. I lived my 20s being super anxious, planning my lives in like couple year increments. I couldn't think about my future in the long run, that I just kind of told myself that, look, we're leaving, leaving, me and my brain, my
We're
physical
leaving.
and my mental state. We're leaving. We're piecing out. Like, you can't live like this anymore. And that kept solidifying in the first Trump administration. And it's like, I can't live in constant fear. This isn't fair.
I had a similar experience. I received TPS after coming from Haiti to the U.S. I was able to go to school, get a job, and get a degree. And then when Trump announced that he was ending TPS, I've made the decision with my wife that we need to move to a different country. So we looked at multiple countries where I could find jobs in. I was fortunate to get a job here in Canada, and my employer paid for me to move to Canada. And I told myself, I cannot have a degree. I'm passionate about supply chain and not being able to work in supply chain. So this is when we made the decision to move here to Canada. I can say it's one of the best decisions that we've ever made. I am now a citizen of Canada, and I can travel back to the US, and I can live in the US for up to 6 months. So it was one of the best decisions we ever made. What advice do you have for anyone who is currently limited by their status in the US or any other country, and they want to move to a different country, but something is stopping them? Maybe it's the fear of what is life going to be like in the other country. What advice do you have for someone?
Well, first, I want to say that the world is your oyster. The fear is completely legitimate because it's a whole different kind of uncertainty. And the uncertainty that we're used to in the States is losing our status, not having any of that. But the uncertainty of abandoning your status in the US and taking on like a whole new opportunity or just a whole new life, it's a different kind of uncertainty. It's more about like, where is life taking me? Will this go well? Will I have any regrets? And I think for anyone who feels frustrated and wants to take the, who wants to move, I would say really think hard on your decision, because no one's, like you and I, we had both great experiences and we don't have any regrets. We are living life, but that's not the case for everyone. There are different people, each person has a different circumstance. Maybe they have a full family with kids, and that makes things really difficult. Maybe they don't have enough money to move, or maybe they'll have a mixed status family, or maybe their parent is sick. So as it is tempting to just leave and be done, really think wisely. Like, think about it in the short run, the long run. Really, really think about it. Talk to family. Don't be alone in the journey. Like, make a bucket list of all the places in the States that you want to see and you want to do and go to. Like, make all these memorable experiences, and most importantly, save enough money too. And don't be pressured to stay or leave. Each person's decision and journey is personal. Like, they will make the right decision for yourself. And I'm not the right person to tell someone what to do. Neither is my Ford. Each person's journey and experience is completely unique.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good advice. You said, I'm moving to Canada, and then you start making plans. How did you talk to your parents about the whole situation, and what was their reaction, and how did you guys reconcile?
Well, a lot of people didn't support it. Like, my mom was like, well, what if something happens if you leave? I remember my supervisors telling me that, my friends, and I said, well, I've been waiting since the moment I found out that I was undocumented, about what if something happens when I leave. And I mentally prepared myself with that possibility that if something happens when I leave, of course I'll be grieving, but also I made that decision on my own agency, on my own empowerment to leave. And it's 2025. Has anything happened? Nothing has happened.
Nothing has
And
happened.
now everyone tells me that I made the right decision. It's like,
But before, they were completely against it
yeah,
or not rooting for it. But
because they didn't want me to be barred from the US, because I did face a 10-year bar. I now have the waiver to be able to visit family and go to the US for work trips, but they were worried about that kind of uncertainty. What if I couldn't come back and visit? What if something happens when I was gone? What if, what if immigration reform passes? Because there's still that, even though it was completely impossible, there's still that glimmer of hope that US had the American dream, or there was still that possibility of that American dream. But today shows that we can take our American dream abroad.
exactly. I think people should not try to live the American dream, but aim to live the immigrant dream, which is completely different. It's take the American dream and make it mobile. Go to a different country, get a really good job to support yourself, have a fulfilling career, and living life how you want to live life. That's the immigrant dream right there. It's not the American dream. If you focus on the American dream, you may not achieve that American dream because you are very limited in your status. But I'm living the Canadian dream because I'm a Canadian citizen. I can vote, I can travel the world. The Canadian passport is very powerful, and I gave what I had in the U.S., which is half empty, to now having a full life. So I'm very proud of that. And that's what I think people should think about, is trying to find the balance. What exactly do you want? Do you want to live a full life, the immigrant dream, or are you still looking for the American dream? There's no good or right answer. It's up to the person to decide if they are willing to live with that limitation and continue to have the hope that something will happen. And it's been almost 25 years. It was 2001 since the first Dream Act was introduced.
Yeah, but nothing has happened.
Nothing has happened.
And then the last
This is-
immigration reform was in 1986 under the Reagan administration. And I would say, like, when it comes to the dream, let's not put a label on the dream. Like, it doesn't have to be an immigrant dream. It's
Okay.
your dream. You carve out your dream. This is my Ford's dream.
Yeah.
And you are living the dream. And I think instead of like not putting like the American dream or the immigrant dream, it's whatever dream that you want it to be.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. You talked to your parents, everyone discouraged you, but you were moving full force ahead. What were some of the steps you needed to take to move to Canada? And how was that whole process of moving?
Um, I just, I mean, I literally just downsized my entire life and left with 3 suitcases.
Wow. Wow.
It was the most stressful moment, but I did it. I lived in a group home in Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
so I had to find a new replacement in my room.
Mm-hmm.
I sold like all my furniture, gave books and like things to friends for them to keep, and I limited my life to my degrees, my yearbooks from childhood,
Wow.
and all whatever clothes I have.
There are some immigrants that will say, that have said, my granddad or my mom came to this country with only $10 in her pocket. What would your kids say if you ever have kids in the future? What would they say that you did when you migrated?
My mom had a huge going away party with over 100 people that turned out to be super chaotic, but she made the best out of her remaining months in the US before she chose an uncertain future.
Wow, pretty amazing.
Very chaotic party, I have to
Wow,
say.
wow, wow. And you moved to Canada, things got real. For the first few weeks, as myself, a ton of paperwork.
Yeah.
So, how was that for you? And I know you have uh, paperwork phobia.
Yes, I have big time paperwork phobia where I have an accountant doing all of my tax stuff because I cannot touch that. Like, nope.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, well, I have to say, like, I left for Toronto on February 1st, 2020. That was a Saturday. That
Mhm.
Monday, I still worked, and in between those working hours, I had to go to Service Canada, Service Ontario, drive test, open up a bank account, and it was overwhelming. I'm pretty sure I had a panic attack or a few just from
Oh
like
no.
how overwhelming it was to like reestablish yourself, fill out all the paperwork. I was also, and I was also grieving for my life. Like I was
Mhm.
crying every day,
Wow.
realizing that, oh my God, I can't fly to the US and see my mom or my friends for God knows how many years.
Wow.
And it was a lot of emotions and a lot of like feeling of overwhelming while also working. And yeah,
So, how long would you say it took you to settle down when your nerves are all calmed and then this is my new life now and I'm embracing it? How long did it take you?
I would say it did. It took a couple weeks, then the pandemic happened, so the nerves went back up
Up
again.
again.
So to where I ended up like endlessly doom scrolling. So I would say
Wow.
I didn't prepare or I think nobody really knew that a full lockdown would have
Mm,
happened. I think I would have been much more if the pandemic, if a full lockdown didn't happen, I think I would have been in a completely different journey. But I think
mhm.
with the pandemic, the reality really hit me. I was I was ready to travel. Like I had all these big travel plans with friends, and then the pandemic gave me the reality of like you are stuck again. You're limited once again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. We went through the same thing, but my wife and I, we had a whole year to enjoy what Canada has to offer. We were living the life. We were going to concerts, restaurants, and then COVID happened. And then it was complete lockdown. So we had it really, really rough. And I could say Canada had one of the strictest lockdown rules.
Mhm.
And I think they were one of the less countries to basically pull back some of the restrictions, it was really rough. So
Yeah.
we have a few friends that went through the same thing. And Pratika, who we will have on the podcast, had a similar experience. She migrated during COVID, so COVID was a really tough time for people migrating to Canada. It was brutal.
And for someone who's super social, who was like extra or who is extroverted, it was hard. Like I was so desperate to socialize that I did outdoor CrossFit classes in the dead winter when the temperatures were
Wow.
like -20. And I was like, you
Wow.
know what? This is my moment to socially distance myself while socializing, while exercising, getting some kind of movement. Like that's how desperate I was for
Wow.
like human interaction.
Wow. And going through all of that, was it worth it moving from the US to Canada?
Yes. The first couple of years absolutely sucked with the lockdown, with being so limited, but it was so worth it in the end. Like, absolutely worth it. Hard start, hard and very shaky start,
Uh-huh.
but so worth it in the end.
That's amazing. You had a hard time, and a lot of people who wants to move to Canada have hard times and have tough decisions to make. And I believe you were the co-founder of Onward.
Yes. So,
Could you tell us a little bit about Onward?
yeah. So, Onward is our network for the well-being and advancement of relocated dreamers. It is an organization that's entirely volunteer-based with a focus of community first to support dreamers who either want to leave the US or taking measures or just collecting information. We're not encouraging anyone to leave first and foremost. Like, your decision is discretionary, it's your own personal decision, but we don't want anyone to feel alone in making the journey to leave. So that's why we developed Onward. So it started with the labor of love. Like when I left, I felt really lonely and isolated in my journey. And then a few months later, I read an article where someone else was based in Spain and left the US. And that's when I realized, oh, there are other folks like us who left the US and felt the same way. So I reached out to the person who lives in Spain, and his name is Jason. And he was an MBA student in Madrid. And we were both sharing our experiences leaving the US and how lonely and isolated we felt. And we both realized there have to be more people out there. So we created a Facebook group called Departed Dreamers until someone said, that sounds like someone who died.
Departed.
Yeah. So we changed, they suggested Onward, which has a much more empowering, uplifting tone to it. And we love that name since. And this was in 2021, February 2021. And more and more people joined Onward through word of mouth. And it ended up being a small niche community of a few hundred. Now we're at almost 6,000.
Wow.
And at that time, our focus was community first, sharing resources. Now it's becoming, our demand is becoming more and more serious. And we're really right now, we're really regrouping, re-strategizing to figure out how can we as a community show up and be there with resources while also giving firm boundaries by protecting our co-founders and our moderators. So we're doing a lot of soul searching in terms of restructuring our organization, maybe incorporating as a nonprofit so we could get funding because our demand is growing, but our capacity is little. So yeah, that's Onward.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for creating such a great platform where people who don't know what the process is like or have certain questions and want to basically be informed of what it is like to migrate to a different country and providing the resources. That's pretty great. So I know it could be really challenging. Some of the immigrant stories that you hear can be heartbroken and have some emotional toll, knowing that somebody's going through something so difficult. How do you find the courage every day to do what you do?
I a lot of setting a lot of personal boundaries, and I think now that I am like many years out of the experience, I'm able to move on and enjoy my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have to set firm boundaries with myself, like in terms of looking at the content, but also not taking it as it was a hard balance. Like at first, it
Yeah.
was from an emotional experience, which is why I created Onward. Now it's more like protecting myself in order to have a good life, but also sharing resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I see it now as, oh, I'm just sharing resources with someone, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll, whether or not they make the choice or whatever research they're going to do next, that's up to them. So I kind of see it as like a to-do task. So I'm not as emotionally tied to it, but I also
Tied to
have
it.
to, but that's also my own way of protecting myself too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty great. So you say Onward is doing some soul searching. How do you see Onward if in the next 2 years? What would you like to accomplish, you and your
Still being a
founders?
community, still providing resources, still having capacity, but how are we going to do that? How do we maintain the capacity? So those are the ways that we're discussing, because it used to be a project of 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need more people on the team.
Amazing. So if you are listening or watching this episode, uh, please reach out. Is it onward.com? What is the website? How do people?
Onwarddreamers.org.
Onwarddreamers.org. So they could just go
Yeah.
there and start learning more about Onward and offer their time. So it's volunteer based. Um, it could be really hard to find volunteers. How how is the engagement rate at Onward? Like,
It's quite high. We don't like personally message people like, hey, can you be a
mm-hmm,
volunteer? It's more like, if anyone's dedicated, please. And there are quite a few, lots of dedicated people that want
uh-huh,
to contribute. And I think it's because from their own experience, they want to give back, the feeling of
mm-hmm.
wanting to give back to the community.
This is when you know you have something amazing going on that is very valuable when people voluntarily get engaged, not you seeking their engagement. They said, you know what? I believe in the dreams and the goals and the mission of Onward, and they want
Exactly.
to contribute. So, how did you guys come with the overall mission of Onward? I guess you guys could take multiple avenues, but you decided what you decided on.
It was, I mean, it was like fostering a community. Like when policy fails us, that's where we lean onto community,
Community.
and we wanted to cultivate like an environment, a culture where everyone is respectful and kind and supportive of one another. And we really enforced that. And that was like a core mission, like a community for people, which is like why it's our network.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. One question that we always ask on the show: if you had the ability to travel backward in time or forward, what time period would you go to and why?
You know, I would never live in like the past. because of just how much things like technology and how much like things like technology have changed in terms of equality, in terms of like gender equality. And I don't want to live in the future because things are regressing with the environment and who knows where, like how long civilization could last with all the chaos that's happening, that I would love to be frozen in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Or if I had the time, if I had the ability to just time travel and visit and experience, I would love to visit ancient civilizations just because I'm a history nerd. But if it means living, give me the 90s.
Give you the 90s.
At least I had a bit of like a taste of the internet, but not too much where we are like, we live in so much like, or we rely on digital connectivity.
So what does the future look like for Tawheeda right now? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking at growing, like emotionally, mentally, like I'm a perfectionist, so I want to embrace mistakes. There's no room for failure for me as an immigrant. Like as an only child, like I can't fail, but I want to cut myself some slack from making mistakes. In terms, like being social, living the life that I want to live, a meaningful, happy life. And I'm already doing that. And I want to continue doing that.
Amazing. So you are able to travel back to the US, and your parents live in the US or they live here in Canada?
My mom lives in the US, yeah.
In the US. So you visit her often?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So what advice do you have for any young immigrant who are watching or listening to the show? What advice would you give them about engaging in activism? I think your work is activism or non-profit providing support to others. What advice would you give someone if they inclined to basically get into that area where you provide support at Onward?
We're not an activist because we're not active. We're not activating for anything. It's, I would say you're not alone. Like lean into community. Community is important. When policy fail us, that's where we have to lean on to community. And many immigrant groups come from cultures that have community. And in North America, it's so much of an individualistic society where we lose the element of community. So it's not that I have an advice for someone, but just for them, like in these rough times, this is where community is so important so that you don't feel alone.
Amazing. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show. It was a very interesting conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to be with us today and being on the show. So we look forward to having you in the future when you have more development for Onward, or you want to drop in and tell us a little bit about what's going on with future Tawheeda. Yeah. So it would be great to have you back on the show.
And thank you so much for creating this podcast and just showing stories beyond and above status.
Amazing. And that's it for this episode of AboveStatus. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. I'm your host, Myford Mysing. AboveStatus is a Mysing Media production, and our theme music is by Steve D. Haiti. A major thank you to Dominic for helping make this show possible. If you enjoyed today's show, we would love to hear from you. Please take a moment to leave us a written review wherever you are listening or watching, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or any other platform where you get your podcast from. Your feedback doesn't just help us grow. It helps more people discover these powerful immigrant stories and uplifting conversations. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with anyone who needs to hear it, and follow us on social media at AboveStatus for more content. If you or anyone you know would like to share your unique story, we would love to have you on the podcast. Please send us a message on your favorite social media platform at AboveStatus. Come back next week for a brand new episode, and remember, no matter where you are or what challenges you face, to stay above status.